Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Morgan's Pop Talks, breaking down the latest in reality TV and pop culture. Back and better than ever from my wife, Hurrdat weekend. As you know, last Thursday, me and the gals, we jet set it off on a Frontier flight to the lovely Tampa, Florida, and gotta say, had a fantastic time just chilling with the girls poolside, oceanside, tiki boat side, dueling piano bar side. You know, it was just fun times all around, fun times with the gals. I gotta say, I've been on two bachelorettes, one wife Hurrdat, okay? And the first two bachelorettes I went on were in my 20s. And what a different beast it was being in your 20s and going on a wife Hurrdat in your 30s. Because let me tell you, we talked about Tums, Pepsid, babies, childbirth, you know, how to manage life with children. That's all we talked about. My wife, Hurrdat. And I'm not complaining whatsoever. It's just where we are now in life. You know, I told my girls, I'm like, I don't want to be too jam-packed with stuff. I want it to be easy, breezy, beautiful Tampa girls, you know, just going wherever the wind blows us. If we want to lay by the pool, if we want to lay by the ocean. We had like a couple things planned, but even then, when it was like 50% activity, 50% relaxation, I was still dead tired. By the end of it, took me like 2.5 days to recover. And, you know, everybody was like, oh, I'm so excited to get back home to my babies. And I was like, I can't wait to see my dog. Honestly, I can't wait to see my dog. He's here. Harley is in the room licking his paws. So I'm sorry if you can hear that. That's the worst type of ASMR. I'm going to try to get him to stop, see if he'll bite me. Harley, stop. I'm feeling a certain type of way about my dog because he got fixed last week and he's just moping around. He's, you know, obviously going through it. So I'm trying to be a gentle parent with him. Anyways, okay, Countdown to Wedding 2.0 is also on the way. Let's see. The Wedding 2.0 is like almost 2 weeks away. It's the 28th. So pray for me. The closer that I get to it, the more I regret doing it. So just, you know, every top of the show rant ends with send your girl some T's and P's because I need it for whatever's going on in my life during that specific time. Let's get into the pop three. Three biggest headlines of reality TV and pop culture this week. We got to start with Kyle and Amanda. Kyle and Amanda have been the subject of much speculation this week. You know, there were blind items coming out about Kyle, and Amanda has been very notably absent from Andrea Denver's wedding in Italy, which can we just pour one out? Andrea Denver, no longer a single man. Ugh. I love that man so much. There's just nothing that guy can do that would ever make me turn against him. I miss him. I miss his accent. I miss his abs. Like, I would just love it if he made more cameos on Summer House. But anyways, so she wasn't there. And fans were like, okay, this is weird, especially when you couple those two things, like all these blind items coming out, which you guys know how I feel about blind items. You have to take it with a grain of salt because like somebody could literally go on one of these websites and be like, I just saw Kyle Cook step on a caterpillar on Fifth Avenue in New York City, and I'm pretty sure that he peed his pants while doing it. And people would like eat it up. You know, they would eat it up. So you just have to take it with a grain of salt. But this is what the first blind item said. It says, this Bravo entrepreneur turned DJ was seen getting extra close with someone who wasn't his partner during a night out following an event for his company. As another breakup in the cards this summer. Maybe she has a reason to not want him out until 4 a.m. The subject line says, let's cook, obviously. It said sip, sip, which is obviously about Loverboy. Then somebody responded to that and said, I saw Kyle at a restaurant in Midtown a couple weeks ago having dinner with 3 guys, one of them being Everett, cheersing to his upcoming divorce. And that was on Blocked by Jax. He responded to that. Kyle responded to that via Instagram story and said, this is absurd. And then they released this statement this week to Betches. It says, while Amanda was sadly not able to make it to Andrea's wedding, they have another destination wedding in Italy this summer, and they're looking forward to spending time away together. It's killing Kyle that he can't be with her right now as these rumors circulate. There's also like this video that's being accompanied with these blind items of Kyle in a dark lit. I think it's Kyle. I'm going to talk about. I hate stories like this, and I'll get to why in a second. But I'm just setting the stage. Seems to be Kyle. It's his mullet, whatever. But his back is turned, talking to a female, and like kind of has got his arm around her, like closely talking. But that's it. You know, there was no like full on kiss in the video or whatever. Like I said, you can't tell who the woman is. You can't 100% tell that it's Kyle. I mean, it looks very much so like Kyle, but somebody was asking me in the DMs, they were like, Morgan, why aren't you sharing the video? Or the blind items, what's going on? I don't really understand. And here's the thing with stories like these, if I post that and any part of it turns out to be wrong or incorrect, I think that's a really bad look. I feel like it's easy for a site like DeuxMoi to do it because they obviously don't have a face attached to, you know, the website that they run, and no shade to DeuxMoi. It's a business in its own right. But to me, that's causing damage to people and it might not be the case. It might be his cousin for all we know. And he couldn't hear because they were playing Black Eyed Peas, I Got a Feeling too loud. And, you know, the lights are very dim. He might not be able to see. Maybe he needs to lean in a little bit more. Maybe it's Amanda's best friend. Like, you just don't know. So I feel like the way people kind of ran with this, it's almost like people love a scandal. Let's just face it. It is what it is. But it kind of felt like people almost wanted it to be true. And I, for one, look, I think Kyle and Amanda have a lot of issues. I mean, first and foremost, the way that Kyle speaks to Amanda on national television is not okay. And Amanda's not all that better. You know, I feel like the way she talks to Kyle is like in more of a playful, joking, like she's not cussing him out on national television, but it's still not my favorite to like call your husband a piece of trash or whatever. So they clearly have stuff to work out. But I also just feel like it's the climate that we're in right now with these two in Summer House that people want to automatically assume that this one is true. We will see. I mean, time will tell. So I'm just not going to be the one to run and jump to a conclusion when I think it will play out for itself. I did see that Kyle was on Jason Tartick's Trading Secrets podcast, and Kyle did say that he was in therapy by himself. I don't know if they're in couples therapy, but he said, I'm in therapy for myself because I need to learn how to communicate better. I need to learn how to not yell when I'm feeling all kinds of flustered, especially when it's towards my wife. My last and final thought about this is I want to know why Amanda isn't there. Like, I don't know. Again, the speculation will run wild, but it's like maybe she had a family event or a work event or something along those lines. But if I'm going to Italy for my friend's wedding, like my husband is coming with me. You know what I mean? And I just feel like there's a couple of these types of instances. I'm thinking about when when Kyle went to Mexico for what should have been Lindsey and Carl's wedding, and Amanda didn't go. And, you know, Kyle said this season that sometimes he feels lonely. And I feel like this might be an example of why they don't do things together like this. They said they're going to another destination wedding in Italy. So let's see. And that's how I feel about that. Okay, headline number 2, Denise Richards is getting a new show on E! It's a docuseries. It's called Denise Richards and the Wild Things. Obviously, a play on Wild Things, movie that starred Denise Richards. It's going to follow her husband, Aaron, her daughters, Sammy, Lola, and Eloise. The last time, of course, we know Denise Richards did a little stint on The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. But before that, she had her own reality show called Denise Richards. It's Complicated. It was on E! In 2008. In a statement, Denise said, "My family and I are thrilled to return to E! Sammy and Lola were just 3 and 4 years old when we first shared our story, and now we've come full circle. This is the perfect partnership for our family series as our lives are full of fun, love, and unpredictability. And we can't wait for the audience to share this adventure with us." Unpopular opinion, I always loved Denise Richards. I just think she's so cool and beautiful, and I've always just really loved her. I don't think Beverly Hills was the right fit for her. Clearly, we all saw how that crash and burn. But I mean, she had a great reality show in 2008, my initial thought, and like no disrespect, and like I hope to God they don't hear this, but like are we still watching E? I don't think that, no disrespect, E raised me. Look, I was sitting there, daily pop, nightly pop, whatever it is, I was there. I was watching E. I was like in it. But like, do we still watch it? I couldn't even tell you one E News host at the current moment as the chips fall where they may at this very particular moment in time. I don't know. Justin Sylvester. I know Adrienne used to be on it, but she's not on it anymore. Kelty Knight, I think. See, beats me. Where's Morgan Stewart? I don't know. I love that it's going to be a half hour. I love a half hour. It's so good. It's so digestible. You can binge watch half hours. It's going to premiere in 2025. And while I don't know if we're still watching E, I do know that we're still watching shows that are produced by Alex Baskin, i.e. Vanderpump Rules, i.e. Housewives. Alex Baskin is one of the executive producers for this show. So let's hope that it's a good one. Last but certainly not least, J-Lo and Ben are trying to sell their house. Now, is this signs of an imminent divorce, or is there another explanation? So obviously, we're kind of in this wave of bad publicity for J-Lo and Ben. Bad publicity really for J-Lo as well. I feel like all of a sudden people just decided that they weren't going to like J-Lo. I think it started with, I think his name is Chris Olsen. He's like a TikToker, and he did this series where he used to take like coffee orders to celebrities, and he never came out and said that it was J-Lo, but he said like, my worst experience was with this person, and everybody said J-Lo. And then everybody started jumping on the bandwagon. So I think like Meghan McCain recently came out this week and said that J-Lo was like a deeply unpleasant guest on The View, and just all of these things, right? She canceled her tour because tickets weren't selling. She said she was homesick, but it's because her tickets weren't selling. Her like documentary thing kind of was a flop. So J-Lo's in the hot seat in 2024. But multiple sources with direct knowledge told TMZ that J-Lo and Ben are using realtor Santiago Arana from the agency, which is Mauricio Umansky's real estate company, to sell a home they bought a little over a year ago. $60 million Beverly Hills mansion, right? Ben has already moved out of the house and is in a rental in Brentwood while he films The Accountant 2. They're asking for around $65 million, with a broker's commission and a new tax on super expensive properties, especially in California, along with significant money they plunked down on improvements. This would mean that they would be taking a loss of millions of dollars. So everyone sees that, oh, they're selling their joint house, they're getting a divorce. But there was a story published in People this week on Tuesday that said that's actually not what it is. A source close to J-Lo said Ben never liked the house and it's too far away from his kids. And that also, at the end of the day, it didn't meet the expectations of J-Lo either. The house is way too big for her, right? A source recently told Entertainment Tonight, Jen and Ben have been living separate lives, but have not officially separated yet. At this point, they're just doing their own thing. They went into their relationship very optimistic and thought things could change, but they haven't. You guys know, I'm naive. So I believe everything everybody says. So when they say like, oh, they just didn't like the house, I'm like, oh, they just didn't like the house. I think two things could be true at the same time. I think that they can not like the house and their relationship could be on the rocks. So we'll see, once they sell this house, if they sell the house, what's the next step? Do they buy a new house together? Do they continue to live separately? Then we'll have our answer. All right, now it's time for the deep dive. We are going to be digging into the Summer House Reunion Part 1. Of course, Summer House Reunion Part 2 comes out tonight, and we'll be digging into that next week. First and foremost, I'm here to say I am appalled that we are only getting a 2-part Southern Charm Summer House Reunion. If I wasn't shouting it from the rooftops that Vanderpump Rules should have only been a 2-part reunion, this is a case study on why. Part 2 of Vanderpump was such a snooze fest. I don't even know why we were there. And you get arguably the best season of Summer House ever, and it's only a 2-parter. But I'm not complaining because it's jam-packed. Part one was jam-packed. We have stuff with Carl and Lindsey. We had the Flower Boy situation. We have Paige, Lindsey, and Danielle. We have Wes and Ciara. We're going to get to all of it. So let's just start at the beginning. The first question is about that conversation and how Carl wanted to, what he says, get on the same page as Lindsey. He wasn't planning on breaking up with her. You already know how I feel about that. If you don't, go back and listen to last week's deep dive, because Carl was clearly breaking up with her. Point blank, period. But on the extended version, what I thought was interesting is Gabby says, I was with Lindsey that Tuesday night when we all got when they, Carl, Lindsey, and production got the text with production on it. And she said, it makes sense that you're going to film something tomorrow because you guys had a very tumultuous weekend. And the very next thing that the audience is going to see is your wedding. So we have to kind of bridge the gap. We have to smooth things over. And that's what we did start to see. Lindsey start the conversation by saying, I've been thinking, I don't want to fight with you. I realize that me asking all these questions can come across as maybe belittling you. And so you could see that framework was starting to move along, but then it took a left real quick. And she said, I asked Wednesday, do you know what they want to film? And he popped off on me. He was screaming at me saying, I'm this close to calling off the wedding. I think generally in the Bravo fandom, people are more inclined to believe Carl over Lindsey. I don't know why that is. I don't know if it's because of Lindsey's past behavior in previous seasons, or, maybe they see Carl as this changed, refined person. There's a number of different reasons. To be honest, I told you guys too, I, throughout the season, was having a hard time painting Carl as the villain, which I still don't think that there's a particular villain in this scenario. They just weren't supposed to be together. But ever since Captain Lee's expose, if you will, I'm side-eyeing Carl a little bit. I mean, if you don't know what happened with Captain Lee and Carl, this podcast debacle, long story short, ages ago, Carl went on Captain Lee's podcast to tell a side of the story. They were very close. They bonded over losing a family member to addiction. I'm pretty sure Captain Lee was going to marry Carl and Lindsey. So they were very close. I feel like Carl thought that was a safe space to tell his side of the story. They did the interview. It never came out. Everyone was like, why? Captain Lee said Carl pulled the plug, but he never went into more details. Well, last week, Captain Lee said on his podcast that Carl popped off on him, that he went off on him after the podcast interview, accusing him of deceiving him, of manipulating him, of, trying to use him, throwing under the bus, all the things. Captain Lee's publicist said it was like Jekyll and Hyde, which we've heard that phrase be used when it comes to Carl. And I think it's validating more of what Lindsey was saying, and I feel like people see Lindsey's, sometimes combativeness, and they don't believe that anybody else in the relationship could be combative. But I believe they both can be, especially now hearing what Captain Lee said. But anyways, so that just kind of makes me not rethink, but see things in a different lens, right? That Lindsey's not the only person that experienced Carl flipping a switch on her. And even at the end of this conversation, Carl is saying things like, but you're happy now. You're dating someone else. I paid for everything. I paid for the cancellation fees. And that to me is also like, I don't know if it's necessarily a manipulation tactic, but it's like a way to make people believe that she's not as upset as she was, or, you know what I'm saying? I just remember being in relationships in the past when I would move on and the guy would be like, oh, but you're happy now. You're with somebody else. You're so happy now. What does it matter? Just because you're happy now doesn't excuse the pain and betrayal that you felt. Look, that's kind of what's going on with Ariana and Lala, right? Where it's like, you moved on. I can't talk about Lala. Look, I know that she's been doing more podcasts. I have been actively ignoring it, because I cannot. And I'm not even one of these people that's out here pitchforking, let's cancel Lala, never come back to the show. She's a great reality TV star, but shut up for the love of the Lord. Okay, anyways, let's move on. The Flower Boy debacle. It's just one of the greatest reality TV moments, at least that we've seen on Summer House. So I love revisiting this conversation. And this comes up. Did Lindsey tell Carl that Kyle could not be a groomsman? She said she had no opinion. 9 people in the bridal party. Carl had 11. So Kyle was one of the 11 that got the boot. And it's the 3 Summer House boys, right? Kyle, Luke, and Andrea. She said, look, if somebody doesn't come, who else would you ask? And he said, Andrea. So then Carl says, I felt like you didn't want Kyle as a groomsman, which that's a slippery slope to go down, especially on reality TV, because I've learned 9 times out of 10, your version of reality is not 100% reality at any given moment, right? There's always one side of the story, another person's side of the story, and then somewhere in the middle. But when you say, I felt like, but you state it as a fact, that's kind of not fair. And I think Carl could have felt like Lindsey didn't want Kyle to be a groomsman. I think the way that they fought the summer before, the things that Kyle said about her, like, it's not that far-fetched that Lindsey wouldn't want him to be a groomsman. But him saying, I felt like this, that's, she never actually said it. So to state it like a fact is kind of wonky, in my opinion. And he even says, like, I should have fought harder and stood my ground. He just said that it was just a feeling and not an actual conversation. So, like, fought harder against who? Yourself? Against your internal dialogue? That the very next question is, like, who thinks that Carl was afraid of Lindsey? So what I'm gathering from this is that Carl was anticipating that if he made Kyle a groomsman, that it would lead to a big argument with Lindsey. And he's presenting that as if that already happened, but it didn't happen. Do you get what I'm saying? So next we get into this little girls chat about how the girls really came together. They seem to have fallen apart since then. But did anybody else notice that we really didn't get any Danielle and Lindsey rekindling friendship content this year? When you think back to where we thought we were going to be this season, last season they had this huge falling out. They didn't really get anywhere in the reunion. And then they come back into the house still kind of walking around on eggshells. And then we were seeing all these, blind items or leaks or whatever, pictures of them together, like, oh, they're mending their friendship. We didn't see any of it. It just kind of happened. There were no conversations about Danielle and Lindsey and their friendship, which makes me think that potentially one of the 2 of those people is on the chopping block and they don't necessarily care to follow through with said person's storylines. Just a theory. But anyways, they all went to dinner and this article came out after their dinner, after Lindsey posted about it. And, they do blame Lindsey, and I don't know. Like, I don't know who called the paparazzi or whatever, or if anybody did. What I do know is that at that particular moment in time, I think media publications used anything to make a headline out of it because it was such a big story, right? Like the Carl and Lindsey breakup really took everybody by storm. People were constantly checking social media pages to find out like what happened, all these other things. So I feel like on one hand, Lindsey probably knew that. And, she did work in PR. But on the other hand, I feel like even if she didn't do it on purpose, it would have happened anyways, whether or not it was that particular photo, there would have been a headline anyways. So it was kind of piggybacking on all the rumors about Carl in the moment. I can see that making sense. But then we get to this Paige and Lindsey situation and I mean, what did I say last week? I said this last week when I had no idea that something like this was going to come up at the reunion. I said she holds on to things until the reunion or until after shows or until confessional moments, and then she decides to let it out, which I think is fine. Like, it makes for good reality TV, but I also would just like to see her if things are bothering her during the season, get involved with it in the season. Like, for example, the article that we're still talking about however many years later. She knew that article had come out. Kyle and Amanda's wedding was at the end of season 6, I think. So they went all of season 7 having this article come out. Paige feeling the way that she felt about it and didn't talk about it at all until the season 7 reunion. Do you get what I'm saying? So here they have this photo shoot sabotage situation where Paige says, Lindsey, I know you called your friend who works here in New York and you guys were joking about sabotaging a photo shoot that I was at. I know you guys did this. My initial reaction is like, why would an employee sabotage a photo shoot at her place of employment? Like, that's one way to get fired real quick. I want to know, was the photo shoot sabotaged? Did anything happen? I don't think it did. You know, like I understand. And if I was Paige and that was true, my feelings would definitely be hurt. She has every right to feel the way that she feels about it. She has every right to kind of keep Lindsey at a distance if that is true, because anybody's feelings would be hurt. But I'm just like, did anything happen there? Otherwise, it's just kind of a nothing burger. It's hearsay. It feels to me like if this happened, it's a snarky conversation on the phone that didn't really have any weight to it. Is it mean? Yeah, it's mean. Have we all done it at one point or another with a friend of me? Like, probably also, yeah. I just don't know if the conversation had it, if there was like really malicious intent behind it. But like I said, I understand why Paige's friends would be hurt. And I think she has every right to kind of, like she said, not necessarily hold it against them, but not forget, when it comes to Danielle and Lindsey. I think looking back on it, I just find it interesting that this was her stance, like saying, I know that you did this, when really you only have Carl's word to go off of, especially because it was very reminiscent of the year prior's reunion, where she's saying, I know you two wrote the story about Craig. I know you did. I know you did, Lindsey and Carl. Well, it turns out you actually didn't. You know what I mean? And that, like I said, there's really no proof of that conversation besides Carl's word. Why would Carl tell her on her birthday at BravoCon, however many months later? And then they talk about the article, and it gets turned to Lindsey throwing Danielle under the bus. I wouldn't want to be accused of something that I didn't do, and no one was saying that Danielle threw Lindsey under the bus last season when she sat there and let her take the fall for it. I don't know. It's just weird energy. Danielle saying, I thought it was juicy is weird energy. Like, I just don't think that you can automatically put you can put blame on Lindsey for throwing her friend under the bus, Danielle. But like, at the end of the day, if Lindsey hadn't have said it, would Danielle have ever copped to it? Probably not. I think the bigger mistake here is Lindsey not telling Danielle that it was said, because they did have a conversation going into this season that, look, we're going to be truthful and transparent with each other. I think maybe the reason why Lindsey didn't say anything to Danielle was because Paige didn't really seem to care in that moment. But I don't know. That's just how I feel. I just found it very odd that they were talking more about Lindsey throwing Danielle under the bus than Danielle being the one to actually leak the article. And, Danielle says, like, you're hurting my company. Paige is like, what company? I don't know if y'all have looked at the App Store reviews of Danielle's company, but it's not great. Like, Paige isn't coming for your company. Like, the 2.3 star review on the reviews page, like, that's what you probably should be worried about. But last but certainly not least, we're going to talk about West and Ciara. Big moment here in part 1 of the reunion. After cameras went down, they were still in the situationship until December. And in those 4 months, their relationship progressed. Met families, went to a wedding together, slept together, which we know Ciara does not do unless she has feelings and can see things going, a little bit further than where they are right now. He lied and was still sleeping with other people over the summer. Paige and Ciara seem to think that he was being insincere to a point, which West disputes and says, like, it was real. He said he can't commit because of show reasons, right? Like, he was wondering, how is it going to be when I go to BravoCon? And how's it going to be when I go to all of these watch parties? And, they immediately shut that down and are like, no, like, we're not going to do this. We all do this. Bravo fans, for the most part, are respectful of your relationship. I don't know if it was like West so much being like, I want to go kiss girls at these parties, as it was like, I don't know how a girlfriend would react if I'm standing up on a bar pouring shots down somebody's throat who's in a bikini. You know what I mean? Like we didn't actually get like an explicit explanation of that. Like there's nothing wrong with the watch party. You know, Paige clocks him pretty easy with that. She's like, we're not your audience, dude. Like we do this all the time. West says he doesn't want to be Ciara's puppet, which, hot take, if you aren't in a relationship on this show, like people don't really care as much. This show is about relationships. When you think Summer House, you think Kyle and Amanda, you think Lindsey and Carl, you think Paige and Craig. It's also about friendships. Of course, you have Jesse and West and our favorite bed bugs, but it's only so interesting seeing a single person talk to a random person at a party whose face is probably blurred out because they forgot to sign the waiver. You know, like who cares? You know what I do care about? I care about how Kyle and Amanda resolve this conflict. I care about seeing how West and Ciara's relationship progresses. The show is about relationships, and it very much so benefited him to be in one this season with Ciara. And that's not to say that people should fake relationships for the sake of the show, but like really, let's look at it objectively. Who gets the most screen time? Here's the single people this season: Danielle, Gabby, and Jesse. The couples, I've already named them: Kyle and Amanda, Lindsey and Carl, Paige and Craig, Ciara and West. So like, I hate to say it, but it actually makes you a bit more interesting to be coupled up. So to say that you're Ciara's puppet is not the look for me personally. I still love West. I think he should continue to be on the show, but I just think that his view of being in a relationship or situationship on the show was a little skewed. Was the show an easy cop-out for West? I think so. I think West can't commit. He even did this interview, and I forgot to pull where it was from. But this is what he said. I don't think it was right to place the end of the relationship on those things. I think I would have read more honest if I was just like, the relationship ran its course. I don't think we were meant to be together. That's it. I think me trying to deflect the actual relationship and name all these external things really made me sound like an idiot. He said, ultimately, I think I handled the reunion horribly and was nervous and said the wrong things, but I still stand on the decision I made. I think our relationship ran its course. I hope that decision doesn't haunt me forever, even though I still think it's the right one. So I don't know. That kind of hurts my heart, especially because when you hear at the end of this reunion, Ciara doesn't say that the door is 100% closed. I mean, she says there would have to be a lot of changes that I would have to see, but she doesn't say no, never. But it kind of sounds like Wes is saying no, never, which is sad. Last but certainly not least, we're going to talk more about the Wilkings sisters and where they stand after the documentary that came out on Netflix. We talked about it last week, Dancing for the Devil, the 7M TikTok cult. There's been a huge uproar since the docuseries has come out. Last week, I told you about Miranda's original response, but now we're getting more. So Miranda shared another video on Monday saying that she was now in danger of people who have seen the Netflix show. She said, I felt safe before, but now I no longer feel safe. I live in danger. I've been followed. I've been getting hate mail. I've been getting death threats. She says, I don't understand how my family thought this documentary would help me or our relationship. Her sister, Melanie, told People, we never wanted any sort of violence to come her way. I'm very sorry that she has experienced that because our only intent was to save her from an unsafe environment and to give her love and know that we're here to support her. She's been under this control for over 3 years. And so the person that's sitting in front of her camera and making these posts, that's not my true sister. I know that this is from the church and from Robert. She's so loving and kind and loved our family. And so for her to point the finger at us, it's just not her true self. Melanie also said that she has reached out to her sister, just saying, I'm here whenever you're ready to talk. And she says she was not expecting a response. She said, my hope for the future is we are all hanging out, having family parties, talking on the daily like we used to, and just being there to support each other. That's all we've ever wanted. I don't know a lot about cults because I've never been in one. I've only watched documentaries of it, but I did see somebody on TikTok saying, like, is there a chance that because of her family, Miranda will end up getting kicked out of the cult? I don't know. Would that be the best thing for her? I mean, probably. Lord knows. I don't know. I don't know nothing about TikToks or cults. I know about TikToks. But I also saw a headline that said there were obviously like police reports made into Robert and the church, and that all of the cases have been closed and nothing came out of it. So I don't know. I mean, I feel like this is far from over, especially when you consider, there are lawsuits from the documentary. We'll see. It just makes me sad. It really, truly does. I don't even know how to have an opinion on it because there's so much unknown here. It's like, obviously Miranda is in a cult. People think an alleged cult, right? Miranda's point of view is that her family and Melanie don't accept her newfound religion. It's wild. It's absolutely wild. And I'll give you all the updates as they come. That's it for today. If you have not done so, please leave a review. I'm kind of like stuck in this plateau of numbers, and I know how many of you listen to the show. So I really want to reach 1,000 reviews. I don't want to put a date on it because I don't want to embarrass myself. But right now I'm at like 700 on one platform, 500 on another. So come on, leave me a little 5-star boop boop, a little love you like a sis. Make sure you're signed up for the Patreon, Bravo Fridays, Bachelor Tuesdays. We do celebs and pop culture on Thursdays. So if you want more, the link is in the show notes below. If not, I'll see you next week. Love you like a sis.